Chapter 6. At lunch, Oggie sat at his usual table in the corner next to the garbage cans. The only other person sitting there was Amy Schneider. Oggie and Amy sat together every day at lunch, but it wasn't because they were friends. The way it worked at Truman was that every lunch table had a crowd of kids who sat together because of something they had in common. There was the jock table where David Corbin and his basketball buddies sat, and there was the table for girls who liked horses, where Bethy Hudson and all her horsey little girlfriends sat. Donica Perfecto had dibs on a choice table by the window, where she and Hannah and Dawn ate lunch together every day. There were lots of tables in the cafeteria, but not one of them was for people like Oggie, who liked to crochet shoelaces and carve cheese. Carving cheese was one of Oggie's favorite hobbies, and, in a sense, Amy Schneider had been the one who discovered it. The Schneiders had moved to town right after the school year began, and Amy was placed in Mr. Smolnowski's class. On her first day at Truman, when nobody made any attempt to be friendly or invite her to sit at their lunch tables, Amy noticed there were empty seats at Oggie's table. She asked him if it would be okay if she sat there too. "Sure," said Oggie, who happened to be eating a piece of cheese at the time. Amy was painfully shy. Plus, she had a mouth full of metal braces with a complicated crisscrossing of colored rubber bands connecting her top teeth to the bottom ones in a way that made it difficult for her to open her mouth. She took the rubber bands off to eat, but the rest of the time she had to keep them on. Between her shyness and the rubber bands, she hardly ever talked, and when she did, it was usually in a whisper. Oggie tried asking her a couple of questions that first day to be polite, but it was so noisy in the cafeteria he couldn't hear her answers. Finally, he gave up and went back to eating his cheese. He was sitting there absent-mindedly nibbling away when suddenly Amy whispered, "Florida." "What?" Oggie asked, wondering why this strange new girl was talking about Florida all of a sudden. Amy pointed at the cheese in his hand. "It's Florida," she said. Sure enough, without meaning to, somehow Oggie had managed to bite his cheese into the shape of the state of Florida. When he got home from school that day, he took an economy pack of cheese slices out of the refrigerator, got the big atlas off the shelf, and spent several hours practicing carving the cheese into the shape of all 50 states. Carving, a word he made up by combining the words chewing and carving, was something Oggie discovered he not only enjoyed, but also found very relaxing. That's why, after the nerve-wracking experience of having to defend his bagel-related spelling sentences in front of the whole class, Oggie felt that a little carving was exactly what he needed. Sitting there in the lunchroom across the table from Amy Schneider, he was relieved to finally be able to pull out one of the slices of cheese he'd been carrying in his back pocket all day and get down to business. The reason Oggie didn't keep the cheese in his lunch bag or his backpack was that he had discovered his back pocket was the only place that could be depended upon to keep the cheese at exactly the right temperature for carving. If the cheese got too cold, it would crack, and if it was too warm, it became sticky and hard to handle. Oggie decided to carve Texas. Some states were easier than others. For instance, Kansas, which was basically a square piece of cheese with the upper right-hand corner chewed off, was about as easy as it got. Texas happened to be one of the most challenging. Oggie had just nibbled down the western side of the state and was heading east toward the panhandle when he suddenly burped, causing him to take too large a bite and ruin the whole thing. "Frappuccino," he said, tossing the mangled cheese down on the table. Without a word, Amy opened her sandwich and pulled out a limp, mayonnaise-coated piece of white cheese, offering it across the table to Oggie. "No thanks," he told her. "Swiss cheese is no good for carving. Too many holes. Don't worry, though. I have an extra piece of good old American right here," he said, patting his back pocket. "I always carry two." Amy shrugged and stuck the cheese back in her sandwich, while Oggie pulled the straw off the back of his juice box and stabbed it into the fruit punch a little too hard, causing a stream of red liquid to squirt out and hit him in the face. He stuck out his tongue just in time to catch a drop of juice as it slid off his chin. Amy covered her mouth and giggled, then handed Oggie the napkin out of her lunchbox. Maybe the road to fame and fortune was not the only path that would turn out to be paved with cheese.